All right. Thanks, David and Loraine, for coming in today. We have some suspects in custody, but we need your help to identify the murderer. I'm going to go through each stage leading up to your event and ask you some questions.
So this is a lean canvas, and we use the lean canvas for anytime we plan an event or anything really. So at Hoosh, we use the lean canvas to plan pretty much any new idea that we have, including our podcast, including our events, because it allows us to just on one page get a blueprint for what that idea is going to be like. There's already lots of good event industry podcasts out there. We realize there's no podcasts out there where two event managers come on every episode and share stories and insights about their experience and their events. We realized that with online meetings and online events, especially Zoom, there's just a lot of Zoom fatigue at the time. So we thought we can't just do a Zoom video podcast where two people come on and chat.
What was the purpose of the goal of the event?
Well, there's two sides to the goal. For us, it's building up a network of event professionals. That was one. And two was giving a platform for event managers to come and talk casually about their experiences in events, especially during COVID.
Did you use any formal methodologies in the planning phase?
This is what we call the before and after grid. And what it allows us to do is find out how do we communicate the benefits and how do we communicate the impact this makes, like why should people watch the show.
Let's have a look at design. So let's start with the preliminaries. How long did design last and who was involved?
The main aspect of design for this event was the artwork. That took a while to get right. So in terms of designing the board, yeah, about 2 weeks.
Who was involved in the overall design stage?
So we had a graphic artist who's a specialist in designing board games. He was the key person, and then it was me sort of directing it.
Talk me through this document here.
In between turns of playing snake and ladder, we ask the guests questions. So then, of course, this is a guide, but then sometimes depends on the context or what their experiences are. We would add in questions that are not in there.
What other documents did you produce during the design phase?
We put together operating procedures of how to operate the show, so that in case, let's say, Loraine's not available or I'm not neither of us available, somebody else can step in.
And so last question, what lessons did you learn during this design phase? And what would you do differently for the next time?
Well, most of the lessons we learned with design came later. One thing we realized was because we wanted this to look like a game with special graphics, right? And in our first design, the game piece was a circle cut out of the player's video, the player's Zoom video. But that just didn't look, it looked good, but it didn't look as fancy as we needed it to for somebody to be impressed just by looking at a 1-minute clip, right? Because like I said earlier, nowadays, with all the competing digital that's out there on the internet, you need that people will be wowed by when they see it right away.
Let's move over to build. All right, so let's start with some preliminaries. Again, how long did this build phase last and who was involved?
So Loraine does the build of every episode that we do. How long does it take, Loraine, to build an episode?
Usually it's very quick, like an hour or less, and would prepare it a day before the episode comes.
Yeah, and then the initial build, which made each episode build really easy for Loraine, only an hour, like she said. That initial phase, again, took us 2 weeks. So just like the planning and design stage took us 2 weeks. And you know what? It's funny how each of these stages took us 2 weeks now that I'm looking back at it.
So talk me through this particular photo.
So it's Astral. This is
Okay.
the gaming platform that we use to host the events Heist, Snakes and Ladders. What you see on the screen right now is how we create the characters, take their photos from LinkedIn, create a token.
So that's your guest, right?
Yeah, he's one of our guests. We had to upload the assets on the game. And then once it's uploaded, we'd have to put those pieces on the helicopter that you see on the lower left.
Mm-hmm. What other technologies did you use?
We use this website called Roll advantage for creating the tokens. We use Zoom. So once it's all up, then we send, of course, the guests will come in through the Zoom invitation that we sent. We will play in Zoom. I will like share my screen and play together.
What lessons did you learn doing this build phase, and what would you do differently the next time?
I think we're always learning. Always, I mean, it works now, but we always step up and do it better. So there will be new ideas popping in here and there. So the viewer will be more engaged in watching.
How long did the testing take? Who was involved?
So an hour. The host will be there, which is the one that you see on the screen. And then the event manager who's controlling the board will be there as well. And an event manager will be there as a backup.
Technical difficulties you've experienced. What do you test to prevent these?
We have rarely encountered technical difficulties, but there was one time that the internet connection of the host went bad, that he was like gone in the middle of the episode.
How often do you run this event?
Now we run it weekly. Used to
Weekly.
be every other week.
What lessons did you learn, and what would you do differently if you were doing another show? And tell me what this screenshot is.
So this is my monitor. One monitor for the board game and another one for the Zoom call and all the other things like information about the guests and the questions and all that. It would be hard for sure to do it on one screen. So
Yes.
yeah, having two screens is better.
How long does execution last? Who was involved?
Execution takes about 1 hour or so, depends on how the game goes. It could be less, it could be more, but yeah, average 1 hour. Who's involved? The host, the event manager controlling the board, and the two guests.
So let's go through your first photo.
So this is the actual game that we have with Adam and Matt.
So I noticed you got green screen on the guests, but you don't. Why is that?
We give them this green screen background for them to download and add into their Zoom. We do this is because we post-produce the episode, and it would be so much easier for the video editor when we have a green screen.
What was involved in the marketing event, and who performed that?
Step was to create a teaser clip. The first pilot episode is the hardest one to do because that depends on whether the show goes on and succeeds or not. We shot the first episode with two guests that were friends and managers in Sydney. Well, we still had to convince them to come on, even though they were friends. We put together a little blurb. So we took all the things that we discovered back in the planning stage and from the before and after grid, and then we used all those insights that we got by asking those questions. And then we used the first episode as a sample to invite our first real guest. For every new episode, we basically message whoever we think would be a good guest with a sample clip.
Talk me through this screenshot. What am I looking at here?
We tried a new approach. Instead of bringing two guests together separately, why not approach one guest and then give the guest the option to invite his or her friend in the industry? And what we find is that method really works. The episodes are so much more fun, and that's how we do it.
How's your event done against the initial objectives and KPIs?
We have up to 15 episodes. The response has been phenomenal. We've had some of the biggest names in the events industry come on the show. Like here we have Joe Pine, for example. And these thought leaders in the events industry, they've all been totally raving about how much they like the show.
All right, let's see who it is. And the murderer is Doug Judy. Good work, guys.
Nikki.
Thanks so much for being guests at Backstage Murder. It's been great having you on. And if you know anyone that would be a good guest for this show, please let us know.